It's springtime here, which means that it's the local curbside collection. That's where you can find all sorts of goodies off the street. You've seen my videos in previous years. Here's a similar one showing what I found in 2021. This year's catch was dominated by a lot of storage containers. Very timely, as a lot of the cardboard boxes I use are disintegrating. So these will be great to put in various bits and pieces. Right here is an extension cord. It looks fairly heavy duty, probably 15, maybe 20 meters long. It's certainly not something I would be wanting to use as an extension cord. It looks patched up here, but you could certainly pull it apart and you get some 3 really good wires that you could use for things like portable HF antennas. I've been doing some antenna experiments lately, and so this will give me more wire to do even more. And it's quite thick wire, so this would be fine for 100 watts, if not more. Right here we've got some wooden doweling. Doesn't look like it's been used. This could be something useful for, say, the boom of a VHF Yagi. This one would be long enough for maybe 5 elements on 2 meters and possibly 10 or 12 elements on 70 centimeters. If you were able to get some garden fittings or similar, you might be able to make a cross piece like this. In fact, you probably don't even need them. You might be able to saw in and make it so that it's a rigid cross. And when you have an antenna or a cross piece like this, you could use it for something like a receiving loop on the medium wave band, or even 630 meters. Or 160 meters, something like that. So yeah, wooden doweling is always quite useful for antenna projects. Now this one is quite a monster. It's about 2.5 or so meters long, which would make it pretty good as a quarter wavelength on 10 meters. Now of course this is wood, it's not conductive, but if you wanted something light and cheap, you could just get kitchen aluminium foil and wrap it around, and there's your conductor. Now the benefit of aluminium foil is that you can just end one piece here and start another bit up the top, and you've got some space here where you could wind a loading coil. So if you've only got a limited amount of space, say you are in an apartment and don't want something very tall sticking out, you could make something like this into a top-loaded vertical antenna. You could have your loading coil, you could possibly wind it around the wood, though I'd go with something a little bit bigger in diameter, maybe a bit of plastic. You could find something like this. Yeah, that would be fine. You could stick it over the top here, screw it in here, and have your loading coil. Oh dear, there's a snail on it. Anyway, this could be the former for a loading coil on a top-loaded vertical. So, although this is only about 2.4 meters tall, you could make this into a top-loaded vertical for another HF band, like even 14 megahertz, where a full-size vertical is 5 meters tall. I think you'd still get reasonable results with something like this and a bit of top loading on 14 megahertz as you're cutting the antenna to about half its size. The main thing is the bandwidth won't be very wide. You won't cover all of 20 meters with it, but especially if you're into digital modes, then a narrow bandwidth of 20 or 30 kilohertz is more than enough. So yeah, definitely scope to make a top loaded vertical just with this wooden doweling that I found off the street. Here's a couple of finds, UHF antennas. This one looks like you could set it up at home. Anyway, it's GME brand, which is a good brand. UHF 477 megahertz, 6.6 dBi. So this is a UHF CB antenna. You could have it at home, or more likely on the bar of a vehicle. This looks quite robust, and we've also got a smaller one. It's also possibly a UHF CB one as well. A little bit shorter, so a little bit less gain, but potentially still useful. In here is a plastic container. You might just be able to build a BitX or micro BitX transceiver into this. It might just fit. But anyway, if you are the type of builder that likes to show the insides of their equipment, then yep, a case like this would be ideal for a little QRP transmitter. And what have we got inside it? Looks like a little remote control. We might have a look inside that later on. And right here is a UV-FM2A. Looks like a little splitter, so might have a look inside that as well. Really popular thing you find on the streets are these garden lights. Often they're solar powered, so there's a potential to get all the solar cells, put them in series and make up quite a big panel, all for nothing. And you could even use it to trickle charge a 12 volt battery, and then you can make your amateur station solar powered. You'd need quite a lot of these solar cells to do that, but a lot of these are fairly common, so if you collect after a few years you may have enough. Oh, bonus, insulating tape, can never run out of that. A bit of printed circuit board. There's a few things on it. These look like, I'm not sure if they're relays. They might be relays or bridge rectifiers. No, they are relays. They look like quite high power relays, 30 amps. So if you want a hefty relay, you can sometimes find them on circuit boards. And that thing there looks like a piezo transducer or buzzer or alarm. Big capacitor here, 500 volts AC. And a few other bits and pieces. Ceramic resonator, 4.0 megahertz. If you're in the United States, well, you could pull this down in frequency and it will just operate in your 80 meter band. And a few other bits and pieces, heatsink, some diodes, fuse, etc. So yeah, a bit of circuit board could be useful for stuff. Right here is a surge protection board. Now, when I worked in electronics, these were quite expensive. I think they were like, I don't know, $80, $100, maybe more. But anyway, this is the one. It's got 6 outlets and lots of other outlets. So yeah, if you want some surge protection, then yep, this power board might be useful if it still works. And we'll dive into some of the other stuff we've got. Yeah, telephones were a big thing. In fact, I'll do the telephones now. Here's a big push button phone, Oricom. Got a whole box of phones. Yeah, here they are. Here's another Oricom push button phone. If you're really clever into electronics, you might be able to use the display for something. All these other phones, these are all Telstra. These were the standard touch phones that were supplied. TF400C, I think that's the touch phone 400, designed and manufactured in Australia. So yep. Oh, here's another phone. This looks like it's been out in the sun a bit, or a bit older. It's gone all yellow. But yep, another Telstra touch phone. And power supply, Uniden 9 volt DC 350 milliamp hour. Now this looks like a phone, but it's not. It's actually a walkie-talkie. Maybe we'll have a look at that inside later on as well. Even got a code key button. Probably 27 meg, Super Regen AM. Our smaller containers. I grabbed this one because it's a good size, a Systema brand, made in New Zealand. These have nice clips, so yep, needs to be cleaned out a bit, but yep, could be quite handy. Don't forget the tools. Yep, this was another find, a saw. Could be handy for woodwork projects. It's a bit sharper than the one I've got. Chopping board, can't leave that behind. Very useful plastic for things like antenna insulators, spreaders for open wire line. Yep, you could even make a circuit breadboard. One of my really popular videos lately has been using these boards, and you put screws in them and you can mount components and build solderless projects. So yep, don't forget the chopping board. Probably the oldest thing here is this old clock radio. Looks 1970s, maybe 80s vintage. AM, FM, General Electric, slide wheel dial, a LED display. So yep, brown. Yep, everything was brown in the 70s. Now what is this? What is this? Well, obviously some sort of ultralight flying machine with all these little motors. Oh, that's a tiny motor in there. And propellers. Little battery, you have to test to see if it's okay or not. Gives you 5 volts, so it could be a handy little power source. And a marker pen. Oh, it smells, so a permanent marker. We'll just see if it works. Now this is quite hefty, lots of LEDs. Spotlight, a printed circuit board inside. This is really robustly built. And there's an electric microphone. What could that be for? Maybe it's a sound activated light or something. Very light, not much in it at all. AC adapter, 12 volt, 3 amp output. Another great thing is it's got a power lead. I'll shorter one of these, so yep, great that it's got a figure 8 power lead connection. TV remote control, infrared LED in there, and an unused Aussie plug. So yep, could be handy, and unused socket. Interesting thing about the plug is, note the earth pin. Hopefully you can see it through the plastic. It is wide, wider than usual. This will not fit in a normal home socket. Yep, this is a special 15 amp power plug, and have a look at the earth thing there. So if you wanted to make a 15 amp extension cord, make sure you've got suitably heavy duty wire. But yep, there's the plug for it, and the socket. Here's something else. Unfortunately they cut the ends of the cables off, but it's a charger for an electric wheelchair. Output 24 volt, 8 amps. Anyway, it's a nice robust box, so if you were thinking of building a linear amplifier, then something like this would be great, with all those fins for the heatsink. Here's the IR remote control, hardly anything in it. Capacitor, couple of transistors, there's the LED on the left, and interestingly a 455 kilohertz ceramic resonator. The IC is mounted upside down. It's actually mounted on the bottom of the printed circuit board. So very little, not even any surface mount components. Inside the TV antenna splitter, we've got ourselves a nice little plastic box here. I think I'll keep that. And the board itself, some capacitors, looks like 1.2 picofarad disc ceramic, so quite handy for VHF circuits. A couple of ferrites and an inductor there. Well, sounds like the receiver's working. Oh. Holy, holy, holy. And the walkie-talkie sort of is. Looking at the board, this is a super cheap one. Doesn't even have a crystal for the transmitter. And how many transistors? Looks like it's only 3. This is the Super Regen receiver, which would also be the transmitter. And here is the audio amplifier. Inside the modem, 25 MHz crystal. Lots of green LEDs, all on long leads, so they can be really useful for projects. And another thing is, we'll just have a look close up, is some really thin coaxial cable. In fact, you'd be mistaken for thinking it was just plain hookup wire, but no, it looks like coax with the outer connector and the middle connector there. So this is the sort of thing that I might keep the board, but throw out the rest of it. Here's the other remote control. Looks like there's even fewer parts. The familiar infrared LED, ceramic resonator, electrolytic, and everything else. Yeah, I think the main intelligence is inside there, and a few other surface mount bits. I think you'd agree it's been a good find. So, wherever you are, look around for cast-offs in case you find things that are useful.